By Ambassador Anil Kumar Trugunayat, former Indian ambassador, who will talk to us about India-Iran ties. Ambassador Trugunayat, do you see Chahbahar port, project and the international north-south transport corridor being given priority under the Pezeshkian administration?
Well, I think so also because Dr. Pezeshkian is interested in reaching out to as many countries as possible, and India is one of the major countries that has maintained excellent relations despite the odds and constraints. So I think that Chahbahar port, which is also a mutually beneficial project for both Iran and India. Besides, this is also has the blessings of Ayatollah Khamenei. So I don't see that on the Chahbahar port and the international north-south transport corridor, which has acquired a much greater traction now, the collaboration will continue apace. And we already have signed this agreement for 10 years, one of the first agreements for managing a port abroad, which is Chahbahar, which is a strategic port for us, and especially for not only connecting with Iran, but also connecting with Afghanistan as well as Central Asia. So indeed. I think that India has been helping Iran despite its sanctions, especially in the international fora as well as in the regional organizations like the BRICS and the SCO. You know that Iran got into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization full membership when India was chairing it. And in the last Johannesburg summit of the BRICS, India also supported Iran's inclusion along with others in the BRICS. And so I think that the relationship is mutually beneficial, it is civilizational, it is historic, and Dr. Pezeshkian will continue to support, I think, India's approach in this and involvement.
Ambassador Trugunayat, why is Iran such an important partner for India, in maintaining a sort of strategic balance in the Arabian Sea, also in light of, the Gwadar port in Balochistan?
Well, as you know that from our point of view, Chahbahar and between Gwadar port, Pakistan and China, which are involved directly in that port, and this is part of the China-Pakistan economic corridor, essentially aiming at India in that sense. And therefore, Chahbahar's location is very strategic and provides us an access, which is essentially obviating the necessity of using Pakistan as a transit to Afghanistan, whichever way we look at it. And so therefore, Chahbahar is very important. And now Chahbahar has also been included in the international north-south transport corridor, and which is why it's important. Secondly, to send Afghanistan, you remember that India wanted to send 50,000 tons of wheat for relief to Afghanistan, and the Pakistanis were not allowing it. They were creating delays and all that. So now that is something that can be addressed, and it was addressed actually in the last 2 or 3 years. We have seen it. Likewise, assistance that is provided to Iran whenever it has problems is also done through the Chahbahar port. And now that Chahbahar is in the INSTC, I think it will be far more easier and better to do. But it is important that we continue to confer at the highest level with the new leadership. I am happy that Prime Minister Modi has already congratulated Dr. Pezeshkian on his victory. And it is about 30 days' time that he will take over as the president. And I think that will continue. Plus, what he has stood for under his For Iran project is essentially easing tensions with the various outside powers other than the region.
So let's come to that, Ambassador Trugunayat. To what extent, does Iran's support for Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, affect its relations with the world? And can this change?
No, I don't think so. That will change, because you must remember that there is a different kind of a power dynamic within the country. For example, this IRGC, which directly works under the Ayatollah and the head of state and supreme leader. And so therefore they take command from there and not from the president. So they are the ones who remain in touch, who use it as their extended arm in different fields. So I don't doubt very much. But for that to be addressed, it is important that the Gaza war is ended. It is important that the Palestinian issue is resolved. Because today Iran has become a major voice for the Palestinian state. And therefore, it is important that those issues, which are the fundamental issues for security and stability in the region, West Asia especially, are addressed. So until and unless those are addressed, we will continue to have these kind of issues. Now, Iran has an influence and sometimes uses them as proxy, as has been addressed by many countries, whether it is Hezbollah or whether it is Hamas or Houthis for that matter. But that does not mean that they 100% control them. And this, most of the studies have suggested that those organizations also have their own mind, and they sometimes continue to operate on their own in their own interest to assert their own presence and their own relevance.
Ambassador Thirungayath, so do you see a chance of change, in any of the policies that are causing Iran's isolation by the West? Because, we played a story out in which the average Iranian was hoping that sanctions would be removed, that the economy would get back on track, that prices would come down, they would get jobs. So these are the common man's concerns.
Obviously, I mean, the domestic discontent is a very major issue. And one of the key issues has been about the women and this hijab campaign, which was started by the conservative government earlier. And the Dr. Pezeshkian has stood against this kind of hijab enforcement. And I think if he's able to pull it off, that will address a very major challenge. Secondly, as far as the issue of the economic sanctions and thus are concerned, a lot will depend essentially on United States. How it reacts to, does it welcome the election of Dr. Pezeshkian, and whether it is willing to reopen the discussions, because very likely we will have Jawad Zarif as the foreign minister, which is quite possible, who has been a great supporter of Dr. Pezeshkian. And earlier he has been involved in all those important negotiations. So that is possible it might open up. But then it is a very short window which is available, because in November, if President Trump wins it, he will once again have the same kind of thing. And you know that he had withdrawn from the nuclear deal, JCPOA. And so again, we are back to square one. So it is not, everything does not depend on Iran alone. It all depends on the other regional dynamic and the global developments as they take place.
And talking about those global developments, of course, Iran has been close to Russia, but, in the new dynamics, this too is a concern for the rest of the world. But, also to what extent do you see Iran's oil, Russia's oil, all this being weaponized if the Russia-Ukraine crisis continues and also the, the Israel-Hamas problem continues indefinitely?
Well, I think that this is a very dangerous territory that the world has moved into, that is weaponization of fuel, fertilizer, and food, as well as that of weaponization of the financial instruments by the United States and the West. I mean, that is clearly creating a very major divide in the global, you can say north-south or east-west or whatever. And we are seeing the new polarization of powers taking place, and Iran will play a role in that. And some people say that there is something called CERN, the China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea kind of a grouping emerging. But hopefully that will not happen. It will not be polarized to that extent, and there should be some efforts made. Because, see, let's say if President Trump comes to power, most of the people feel that perhaps the Russia-Ukraine war might see some kind of a resolution. Likewise, already we are seeing that Israel-Gaza war, there are discussions going on for ceasefire and exchange of hostages. And if that happens, then we might see some kind of a relief there, because otherwise we are seeing already in the Middle East, Hezbollah is attacking, there are others are working. So what we are seeing today is just the escalation and the blow-up waiting to happen at any time, which the whole world has feared, because that will have a direct consequence not only on us, but all the global and value supply chains everywhere.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Anil Kumar Thirungayath. Thank you for joining us and enlightening us on Iran's new government. Now, India's